I should have known something was off when my parents invited me over for dinner. It wasn't my birthday. It wasn't a holiday. Yet my mother's voice on the phone had been unusually formal. "We need to talk about something important," she had said. So I went. I sat at the dining table, across from my younger brother and sister, Mason and Olivia. They were whispering and smirking like they were in on some private joke. My parents sat at the head of the table, their expressions unreadable. My father cleared his throat. "We wanted to let you know, we've finalized our will." Blinked. Their will. That wasn't what I expected. And, asked cautiously, "We've decided to leave everything to Mason and Olivia," my mother said casually, as if discussing the weather. My stomach dropped. "Everything?" My voice came out weak. My father nodded. "Yes. The house, the savings, the investments, the family business. Everything will be split between them." I looked at my parents, waiting for an explanation. "And what about me?" finally asked. My mother smiled like she had rehearsed this moment. "Oh, don't worry, dear. We haven't forgotten you." She pulled out an envelope and handed it to me. With shaking hands I opened it. Inside was a $20 bill. Cold, sick feeling spread through me. This is a joke, right?" I whispered. My father shook his head. "We figured you'd appreciate a little something. You've always been independent. You don't need our money." Olivia giggled. Mason smirked like he had just won something. I pushed my chair back and stood up, gripping the $20 bill so tightly my knuckles turned white. "You're really cutting me out completely. After everything." My voice shook, but not from sadness. From rage. "Sweetheart, don't be dramatic," my mother sighed. "It's not like you ever really contributed to the family business. Mason and Olivia will continue our legacy." I turned to my siblings. Mason, the spoiled golden boy. Olivia, the manipulative princess. Neither of them had worked a real job in their lives. "And what have they done to deserve it?" I demanded. Mason scoffed. "Well, we didn't run off and do our own thing, did we?" I felt a lump form in my throat. So that's what this was about. I had chosen my own path instead of blindly following their expectations. And for that they had erased me. I took a deep breath and straightened my shoulders. "Fine." My mother blinked. "Excuse me." "Fine," I repeated, forcing a smile. "Keep everything. Give it all to them. But don't come crying to me when it all falls apart." Then I turned to Mason and Olivia, my voice steady. "You have no idea what's coming." With that, I walked out of the house, out of their lives. But one thing was certain. They may have left me with nothing, but I would make sure they lost everything. I walked out of that house, my parents' betrayal still burning inside me. They thought I was nothing. They thought I would just accept it, walk away with my pathetic $20 bill, and fade into the background. They were wrong. As I stepped outside, I clenched the $20 bill in my fist. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. I pulled out my phone and called the one person who had always believed in me. Uncle Victor. Uncle Victor was my father's older brother. Unlike my parents, he had always treated me with respect. While my father built his business, Uncle Victor had taken a different path, building his own empire in the real estate and finance world. When he picked up, his voice was warm as always. "Alex! What a surprise. How are you?" I exhaled slowly. "They did it, Uncle Vic. They left me with nothing." There was silence on the other end. Then his tone darkened. "Come to my office. Now." An hour later, I sat in Uncle Victor's office. He listened as I told him everything. How my parents had finalized their will, cutting me out, leaving everything to Mason and Olivia. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. "Alex," he said slowly, "there's something you don't know." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Your father and we started the business together. It wasn't just his. I had a stake in it too. But years ago, when he married your mother, she convinced him to push me out." My stomach twisted. "Wait, what?" "I let it go," he continued. I had my own ventures and I didn't want to fight. But here's the thing, Alex. Your father's company isn't as stable as it looks. If something were to happen, if the right moves were made, everything could collapse. I sat forward. An idea was forming. A dangerous, thrilling idea. What if, I said slowly, we didn't let them win? Uncle Victor's eyes gleamed. Now we're talking. By the time I left his office, I had a plan. Mason and Olivia thought they had everything. But they had no experience. No idea how to run a business. No idea that their golden empire was built on shaky ground. And I was going to make them watch it crumble. I pulled out my phone and sent a message. To Mason and Olivia. Hope you enjoy my share of the inheritance. I won't be needing it. But you might need some help soon. Once everything starts falling apart. Then I turned off my phone and walked away. The game had begun. They took everything from me. Now I would take it all back. Mason and Olivia probably thought my message was a joke. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning I met Uncle Victor again. He already had a plan in motion. The company is standing on shaky ground, Alex, he explained. Your father made a few risky investments, and if the right people pull out their support, things will get messy fast. How bad? Asked. He smirked. Bad enough to make your dear siblings sweat. I grinned. Let's do it. The first move was subtle. Uncle Victor reached out to key investors, people who had supported my father's company for years. Some of them had doubts about Mason and Olivia's ability to run things. Others simply saw an opportunity to make more money elsewhere. One by one they started pulling out. Stocks dipped. Rumors spread. Employees whispered about instability. Mason and Olivia had no idea how to handle it. And that was just the beginning. A week later Mason called me. I let it ring. Then he texted. Mason, what the hell are you doing? Me, what do you mean? Mason, investors are backing out. The board is panicking. Did you do this? Me, oh, so now you want to talk. Maybe if you had thrown in an extra $20, I'd have considered helping. Mason, you're messing with our parents' legacy. Me, correction. Your legacy. Remember. I don't exist, right? No reply. I smirked and tossed my phone onto the table. They were sweating. But at the next big investor meeting, Mason and Olivia had to speak in front of the board. I wasn't there, but I saw the aftermath. Reporters caught Mason stumbling over his words. Olivia tried to explain their strategy, but she didn't have a clue. By the time they left the meeting, stocks had plummeted further. The company was on the verge of disaster. And I hadn't even played my biggest move yet. Sitting back, I took a sip of my coffee, watching the news headlines roll in. Family business faces uncertain future after leadership change. Smiled. This was just the beginning. They took everything from me. Now, I was going to make them wish they had given me more than $20. Mason and Olivia were drowning, and they knew it. The business was unraveling faster than they could control. Investors were leaving, the board was losing faith, and the media was having a field day with their failures. And the best part, I wasn't even done yet. A few days after their disastrous investor meeting, Mason called again. This time I answered. What do you want, Mason? I said, keeping my voice bored. You know exactly what I want, he snapped. You're sabotaging us. Don't deny it. I laughed. I don't have to sabotage you, Mason. You're doing a great job of failing on your own. There was a pause. Then softer he said, Look, maybe we can work something out. This was interesting. Work something out. I repeated. You mean like, an inheritance? A cut of the company? You know, the thing I was supposed to get before you two screwed me over. Silence. Smirk. He was desperate. But not desperate enough. Nah, I said. I think I'll let you suffer a little longer. Then I hung up. I met with Uncle Victor again. They're cracking, I told him. Now we go for the kill. He nodded. I have just the thing. That night, a leak went out to the media. Documents exposing poor financial decisions made under Mason and Olivia's leadership. Reports of mismanagement, reckless spending, and even a few shady dealings they thought no one knew about. By morning, the company was in full-blown crisis mode. Mason and Olivia were trending, but for all the wrong reasons. Hashtag Nepo fail. Hashtag worse ever. Hashtag family business gone wrong. I scrolled through the chaos, enjoying every second of it. Then my phone rang. Not Mason. Smirk. Now things were really getting fun. When I saw Dad's name flashing on my screen, I let it ring. Then, just as it was about to go to voicemail, I answered. Finally, he barked. You think this is funny? Destroying your own family. I leaned back in my chair, smirking. Destroying? No, Dad. I'm just sitting back and watching Mason and Olivia run the company into the ground. You made your choice, remember? Gave them everything. I'm just letting them handle it. Damn it, Alex, he snapped. Enough of this nonsense. Come to the house. Now. I debated saying no. Let them sweat. But then I thought, why not? Time to see just how broken they were. Fine, I said. I'll be there soon. When I arrived, the house felt different. Gone was the smug arrogance from Mason and Olivia. Instead, they looked exhausted. Olivia's hair was a mess, her makeup smudged like she'd been crying. Mason was pacing, his usual confidence replaced by nervous energy. Dad sat at the head of the dining table, staring me down. Mom. She wasn't even making eye contact. I took my seat, deliberately dragging it back before sitting down. Let them feel the power shift. All right, I said, crossing my arms. Let's hear it. Dad took a deep breath. We made a mistake. I raised an eyebrow. Which part? Cutting me out or assuming Mason and Olivia could actually run a company? Olivia flinched. Mason's jaw tightened. Dad sighed. Look, the business is in trouble. You've made your point. Now we need to fix this. We? I laughed. Oh no, Dad. There's no we. This is your problem. You gave them everything. You told me I was independent, right? That I didn't need your money. Well, guess what? I don't. Mom finally spoke, her voice shaking. Alex, please. If this company collapses, our family's legacy is gone. I stared at her, feeling nothing but cold detachment. Funny. You didn't care about family legacy when you handed it over to these two idiots. Olivia burst into tears. Mason slammed his fist on the table. Damn it, Alex. We get it. You're pissed. But if you don't help, we all lose. I stood up. No, you lose. Me. I already lost everything the day you cut me out. And guess what? I survived. I turned to leave. Then, just before stepping out the door, I glanced back. Good luck fixing your mess. You're gonna need it. And with that, I walked out, leaving them to fall apart. I walked out of that house without a shred of regret. For years I had been the outsider, the one they dismissed, overlooked, and ignored. Now, they were the ones drowning. And I was going to enjoy every second of it. I thought they'd at least try to fight back. But Mason and Olivia weren't built for this. The next morning, Uncle Victor called me, laughing. Alex, you need to see this, he said, sending me a link. Opened it. Mason and Olivia were on TV. A news segment about their company's financial collapse was playing. A journalist was grilling them about the lost investors, plummeting stock prices, and their complete incompetence. Olivia was crying, again. Mason tried to act tough, but his voice cracked as he stammered through excuses. It was pathetic. I sat back sipping my coffee. Wow, I muttered, grinning. They're really falling apart, huh? Uncle Victor chuckled. This is just the beginning. Their board is calling for a leadership change. I raised an eyebrow. Meaning, he said. If the right person steps in, Mason and Olivia could be pushed out completely. I set my cup down. Interesting. And who would this right person be? Asked. Uncle Victor chuckled. Who do you think? Few hours later, Dad called again. I let it ring twice. Then I answered. Alex, he started, his voice tight. We need to talk. I think we already did that, I replied lazily. Didn't end too well for you guys. Enough of the games, he snapped. The board is considering replacing Mason and Olivia. They want someone who actually knows what they're doing. Smiled. And let me guess. They want me. There was a long silence. Then, with clear reluctance, Dad muttered, Yes. I leaned back, enjoying the moment. They had mocked me, cast me aside, handed everything to Mason and Olivia. And now, they were begging me to save them. Tell me, Dad, I said slowly. What do I get out of this? His voice was stiff. The company. I let that sink in. Not just a position, I clarified. Not just a job. You're talking full control. Yes. Exhaled. I had won. But I wasn't about to make this easy. I'll think about it, I said, grinning. And then, before he could say another word, I hung up. I could have said yes right away. I could have walked into that boardroom, taken my rightful place, and saved them from their mess. But that would have been too easy. No, I wanted them to suffer a little more. The next day, Uncle Victor updated me. They're desperate, Alex, he said, chuckling. The board has lost all faith in Mason and Olivia. Investors are demanding new leadership immediately. And Dad? Asked. Cornered. Smirked. Perfect. Check my phone. Mason, Alex, let's talk. Please. Olivia, I know we messed up. Just come back. I left them on read. 2 days later, Dad called again. This time I picked up immediately. All right, I said. I'll meet you. My terms. Silence. Then reluctantly. Fine. We met at the corporate office. Dad, Mason, Olivia, and several board members were already there when I arrived. I walked in like I owned the place, because soon I would. I'd stood. Alex. I held up a hand. Save it. Let's talk business. You want me back, I said, looking at the board. You want me to fix this mess? They nodded. Then here's the deal. I leaned forward. I take full control. Theo. Unquestioned authority. Mason and Olivia. Out. Mason's face turned red. That's ridiculous, he snapped. You can't just. Cut him off. I can. And I will. Or you can watch this company crumble. The board members whispered. One of them finally spoke. Alex, you have the experience. The intelligence. We believe in you. Smiled. Dad sighed, rubbing his temples. He looked defeated. Fine, he muttered. You win. Olivia let out a sob. Mason looked like he wanted to punch something. Understood. Good. Meeting over. And just like that, everything was mine. That night I walked through my new office, the corner office that once belonged to Dad. I sat in the leather chair, exhaling. Years of being overlooked, disrespected, and cast aside. And now, I had it all. I picked up my phone and sent one final text to Mason and Olivia. Hope that $20 was worth it. Then I blocked them both. I sat in my new corner office, watching the city lights twinkle below. Everything I had worked for, everything they took from me was now mine. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The next morning, Mason barged into my office. No invitation. No knocking. Pure desperation. You can't do this, he hissed, slamming his hands on my desk. You can't just take everything from us. I leaned back in my chair, amused. Funny, I said. That's exactly what you did to me. Olivia walked in behind him, her eyes puffy from crying. Alex, please, she whispered. We messed up, okay? But we're still family. I raised an eyebrow. Family, I repeated. You mean like how you treated me when I was left out of the will? Like how you laughed and celebrated while I got a $20 coupon? Mason clenched his fists. You're being petty. I laughed. No, Mason. I'm being smart. The board agrees you're unfit to run this company. You have 2 choices. You can take the severance package and leave quietly. I leaned forward. Or I can personally make sure no one in this industry hires you again." Mason's face turned white. He knew I wasn't bluffing. "This isn't over," he muttered, storming out. Olivia hesitated, looking at me with pleading eyes. "It is for you," I said coldly. She swallowed, then ran after Mason. That night, Dad came to my office. He looked older, more exhausted than I had ever seen him. "You really went through with it," he said quietly. "I did," I replied. He sighed, looking around. "This was never how I wanted things to end." Leaned back. "Then maybe you should have thought twice before cutting me out." He looked at me for a long moment. "You've changed, Alex." Smirk. "Yeah. And guess what? I like who I am now." Dad nodded slowly, then stood. "I just hope you don't forget what it feels like to be left behind." Then he walked out. For a moment I sat there staring at the door. Then, shaking off the thought, I turned back to my work. A few months later, the company was stronger than ever under my leadership. I had restored its reputation, secured new investors, and made it clear that incompetence would never be tolerated again. And as for Mason and Olivia, Mason tried to start his own company. Failed. Investors refused to back him, and after a year he went bankrupt. Olivia faded into obscurity, living off whatever savings she had left. And my parents, they moved to Florida, far away from the empire they once controlled. One day I received a letter from them. I didn't bother opening it. Instead, I tossed it into my drawer and went back to work. Because I wasn't looking back. I had won. And now the future was mine. The end.